So I finally finished Skeleton Crew by Stephen King. Now, of course, I've done a separate review of The Mist, and you can check that out on my channel. But regarding The Mist, I think that it is the best item in this short story collection. I would say that it is the only good story in this collection, and it is the only story that it is worth reading and worth remembering, because every other story here is kind of lackluster, not really that interesting. But I'll get to it. Um, on a side note, I had no idea that The Mist was written in the 70s. For some reason, I thought that it was written at least in the 90s. But here in the afterword, at the end, Stephen King says that he wrote it in the 70s. So it kind of, I don't know, for some reason, it kind of explains why The Mist turned out the way that it did. Now, regarding the other stories, okay, let's just get down to it. This collection is a bit dull. It is a bit subpar, even below average. The only reason I picked up this collection is because of The Mist. I wanted to read The Mist because I'm a big fan of the movie. But the rest of these stories are a bit hit or miss. They're kind of meh. They're kind of mid, I would say. Okay, so we're just gonna talk about them briefly. Skipping The Mist. Here There Be Tigers. It is a whatever story about some kid going to the bathroom at school, and there's a tiger, and I guess it eats his teacher. It is a whatever story. The Monkey. It is actually interesting at points. It is a bit fascinating what this cursed item is. Unfortunately, Stephen King doesn't really do anything with it. It's just a cursed item that kills people for some reason. We don't really get that deep into it. The Monkey, even though it is kind of corny and cliche at times, it is still interesting. There's something there. I could clearly see that this story had potential, but Stephen King doesn't really do anything with it. And in regards to The Monkey, apparently it doesn't matter if you throw it away somehow, it keeps showing up. It keeps coming back for some reason. At one time, it is thrown in a well, and somehow it comes back, and we find out that it took about 20 years to come back in the life of our protagonist. And I'm thinking, what if he threw it down the well and poured cement on top of it? Would it still magically reappear? Because at the end of this story, the monkey is thrown at the bottom of a lake, and I'm thinking, is it gonna come back again? Is it gonna respawn? And our protagonist has some sort of vision that yes, actually somebody else will fish the monkey out of the lake, and the cycle will continue. And that's pretty much it. It was interesting, but at the end of the day, it is a pretty average story because in classic Stephen King fashion, Stephen King doesn't really do anything with it. It is obvious that this was just a concept, an idea, and that was about it. Okay. Cain Rose Up. I honestly don't even remember what this was about. Okay. Mrs. Todd's Shortcut. This is about a woman who is just hyper focused on, obsessed on driving the shortest route possible, and for some reason she discovers, I don't know, time travel, passing parallel dimensions, pocket dimensions, and for some reason she gets younger. Okay, it is a cute little idea. I wasn't really too immersed. I wasn't really too attached to this story. To me, this is a whatever story. Okay, The Jaunt. It is a little sci-fi story. It's all right. I don't really care about it. It's whatever. The Wedding Gig, of course, is another story that it is kind of your average run-of-the-mill story. I don't know, gangsters, in the early 20s, whatever. Paranoid, a chant. I won't talk about it because it is whatever. Now, The Raft. The Raft is on the cover, okay? And The Raft, despite the fact that it is bare bones at best, The Raft has bits and pieces of it that are actually interesting. And yet again, Stephen King doesn't do anything with it. These young adults, they go on this raft on this lake, and it just so happens that there is this ink blob creature on the lake, and it moves really fast, and it eats all of these people except one. But at the end, we are left to imagine that even this protagonist will be eaten by this black ink blob monster, and despite the fact that it is a bit stale and stagnant and dull, it is your run-of-the-mill monster story. There is no explanation. There are no hints, whatever. It's still interesting for some reason. And it is a damn shame that Stephen King really doesn't do anything with it. Again, this story highlights that Stephen King is this type of writer. His process is this. He has an idea. People on a raft, some bizarre amorphous monster. See you later, alligator. Moving on. The word processor of the gods. Okay. Interesting. You know, you can really tell how dated some of these stories are. It's a cute little story. Again, he doesn't really do anything with it. Whatever. The Man Who Would Not Shake Hands. I mean, it's all right. The ending is the ending, I would say, to this is kind of unique. The man shakes his own hand and he dies because whoever he shakes hands with dies. Yet again, another concept that Stephen King really doesn't do anything with. His main goal is an idea, the bare bones idea, see you later. He doesn't really develop things. You know, I'm not trying to criticize the man, but to me, it's so obvious, okay? Beach World, again, I don't really remember this one. The Reaper's Image, whatever. Nona, it was all right at certain points. There is this mystery of what this woman really is. It seems that she influences this protagonist to commit murder and violence. She might be some sort of demon, whatever. But yet again, Stephen King doesn't really do anything with it. It's just this guy who is a bum. He meets this beautiful lady, and for some reason, this beautiful lady has this influence over him, and he does bad things, and then he ends up in jail for murder. And yet again, it is bare bones, nothing developed, nothing polished. The rough idea or concept, nothing else. Okay, this is the sin or the handicap of this collection of short stories. It is just the bare bones idea, and Stephen King doesn't even try to extend or expand this basic idea. For Owen, it's whatever. Survivor type. Of course, I've seen videos in which Stephen King mentions this short story where this guy, he is stranded on a little piece of rock and he has to eat himself to survive. Again, this is a pretty cool and grotesque idea, but the way that it is written, the storytelling in of itself, it's kind of banal, I would say. I don't feel the horror. It's truly terrifying that this guy has to resort to cutting his legs and eating himself to survive. And of course, by the end, he dies. But in this case, the way that survivor type is written, Stephen King, he doesn't do anything. Okay, I don't want to be so negative. I don't want to be so nagging, and I don't want to underline every little mistake or whatever and flaw and defect. But it's just there was something there, a kernel of something above average, and he doesn't really do anything with it, okay? Uncle Otto's Truck. Of course, now this is a classic Stephen King hallmark, trademark idea, concept. For some reason, he thinks that inanimate objects coming to life and killing people is, I don't know, something really crazy. You know, I've got Christine. I haven't read it yet, but it's just I don't understand this idea. How can this be crazy? Some old rusty truck that's been sitting out in the open for decades is slowly inching its way to kill this guy for some reason because he killed his partner or whatever. And it's just the idea in of itself. Now this is what I want to say. The idea in of itself of Uncle Otto's Truck is truly lame. It's laughable. It's so, I don't want to apply this term to fiction, but this concept is so unrealistic, so far-fetched, that it simply is, it is comical. Okay, the truck who is possessed by the malevolent spirit of some guy, and at the end, this truck somehow succeeds in killing Uncle Otto, and apparently we're supposed to be, ooh, oh boy, ooh, and I'm just like, it's like that meme where, it's like that meme, I think it is in The Simpsons, where Stephen King is sitting with his editor or his agent, and this agent is saying, so Stephen, do you have any ideas for a new novel? And Stephen King, he looks at a lamp and he's like, what if this lamp is possessed by an evil spirit and goes on a killing spree? Ooh, and I'm just like, bro, this is like, I don't know, 70s stuff. I don't know. It is so outdated in a way. This is why I don't really understand why Christine is so popular. But I'll get to read it someday. Okay. Now we have sort of a double feature, which is Morning Deliveries and Laundry Game, The Milkman #1 and #2. I guess these two are interesting in a way because we have a few speculations and a few hints that the milkman is evil or deranged. I don't know. And we have two other people that are, I don't know, they're a bunch of drunken losers and they want to hurt the milkman, I guess. And the milkman, by the end, I guess, kills these two people on the road, something like that. There was something there. I feel a certain vibe with these two stories. Like there is something there. Stephen King manages to write a certain vibe here. I can really discern the evil of this milkman character. Maybe he is more than just a person. Maybe he is a supernatural entity that thrives on mayhem. Who knows? But there's nothing really done here out of the ordinary. Stephen King has this penchant, has this predilection to just write about these redneck hillbilly hicks who are drunken losers and they just want to cause violence. And I'm just like, how many Stephen King stories are there where we have a bunch of these drunken, illiterate bozos who talk funny and they just want to hurt people? I mean, a lot, I guess. Okay. Now we have Grandma, and this also had something. It had a foundation. It's interesting. We have this little kid who is really afraid of his grandma because his grandma is very old and very ugly and very fat and very scary, I think that we can all remember, or we can relate to this story because we as children all had some sort of trauma, maybe with our grandparents because they're old and ugly and fat and whatever. It is relatable, and the gist of it is that this kid, his grandma is dying, and there are hints that his grandma isn't what she seems to be. It seems to me, and these are just my interpretations, but it seems that the grandma is some sort of witch or druid or some sort of sorcerer, because apparently she had some books. She couldn't get pregnant, and then when she got these books, she had kids one after the other, and then she was ostracized by society because some people found these, quote, weird books. And now grandma is dying, and from what I understand, grandma actually inserts her soul into her grandkid's body, and it seems that the grandkid dies, and now the grandma is in possession of her grandkid's body. There's a switch happening that happens, and I'm just like, okay, I think that I think that I have seen stories like this before about body swapping and what have you. The end is a bit morbid and scary because our protagonist simply, I guess, dies. He's a little kid. It's a bit scary, and the grandma has no qualms about taking over the body of her own grandkid, and she's kind of bubbly at the end. She can't wait to keep on living. Yeah. Okay. The Ballad of the Flexible Bullet. Okay, it is, I would say, for Stephen King, this one is a bit bizarre. Even for Stephen King, we have paranoid people, and then we have typewriters with little people in these typewriters. I think they're called Fornits or whatever. And essentially, this story of the Ballad of the Flexible Bullet is about a lot of talking about nothing. The gist of it is that we had a paranoid writer who had elves, little people in the typewriter, and he doesn't like technology, electricity. He is extremely paranoid. He thinks that the FBI and the CIA are after him. Whatever. He thinks that everybody is the enemy. It is an interesting tale that revolves around what happens when you are extremely paranoid and you imagine things, but at the end, it kind of is revealed that all of this was factual, all of this was true, and this guy had all the reasons in the world to be so paranoid, because it turns out that the Fornits are real. It seems that maybe electricity and TV and radios are bad for you. Radium, microwave ovens. To me, this story is a bit too bloated. There's too much narration. There's too much of nothing. There's a whole lot of nothing. There's a whole lot of talking about nothing. This story could have been cut in half, and it still would have been too much, okay? What Stephen King excels at here is he excels at describing what paranoia is truly like, where you just think that everything is bad for you and everything and everyone is out to get you. And of course the comical twist at the end is that some of these things might turn out to be true. And now at the end we have the last story, The Reach, in which this old lady who has been living on this island her entire life, she goes out in a snowstorm and she freezes to death because she has visions or hallucinations about the people who have been dead for a long time. It's whatever. Again, it's bare bones. And this pretty much is the collection of short stories. Now, I'm gonna have to say this. Listen, if anyone else would have written these stories, with the exception of The Mist, because I think The Mist is actually above average. If you or I would have written these stories, doesn't matter. I can tell you 100% that no literary agent or publishing house would have touched them, because most of them, if not all of them, are kind of mid or below average. And I'm not trying to criticize or be mean to Stephen King, but this is the truth. We have to be real here. Okay? I'm a writer myself. I've had dealings with publishing houses and literary agents. I know how they operate. Most of them, if not all of them, would not even touch these stories because they're not it. They're not something special. Okay? But because they are written by Stephen King, I would argue that this is why they got published into a collection, into a compendium. Okay? And you could argue against this with me, but I think I know what I'm talking about. Again, I'm not trying to be mean or anything, but I can clearly see and tell you honestly that if these stories were written by anybody else except Stephen King, nobody would publish them. Not a single publishing house would touch them. Not a single literary agent would touch them, because they're just not it. They are not gems, okay? They are not above average. They're not in a league of their own. The only one that is in a league of its own is The Mist. And even that, if you've seen my review, even The Mist is a bit lackluster in certain avenues, okay? And to end this review with this, listen, Stephen King's process, his writing process, it is so out there in the open. You can see it clearly. And if you have read his book on writings, and if you've seen videos with him, you can clearly see something. There is a pattern. I would say that this is a handicap which cripples his writing. Because Stephen King is this type of writer. He has ideas. He has concepts that just hit him at the moment, suddenly. And if you've read enough Stephen King, you can clearly see that he doesn't do anything with the concepts and ideas that hit him suddenly. His inspiration and his muse, for the most part, is this. He gets a basic idea and he writes a basic story. And for the most part, that is it. Okay? And I can... And I'm not exaggerating, because look at all these stories here. They're just basic, sometimes banal, dull. They stagnate. It's a slog and a chore to read. And why is this so? Because he is overcome by this need to write about a certain thing. And then he does not ever develop this basic idea. He does not polish. He does not extend or expand. The Mist, for example, his main idea is, what if these people get trapped in this supermarket and weird stuff happens, and that's it. And it's such a shame, because The Mist, I would say, could have been an absolute masterpiece. Okay? You can clearly see here that this is the Stephen King blueprint or pattern. He has a basic idea, he puts it down on the paper, and maybe he just does a couple of corrections. That is it. He does not develop the idea. And tell me just how many novels and short stories and novellas of his you've read where you're just like, what happened? What happened? This could have been great. This could have been tremendous. And Stephen King doesn't do anything with it. This is the trademark Stephen King blueprint. All of these stories in this collection suffer from this cardinal sin, in which Stephen King has a basic idea, he writes about it, see you later, alligator. And if you read his book on writing, he tells you that for the most part, he spends about a week on a short story. In the book on writing, he says that at most, he spends about 3 months on a manuscript. And this to me, being a writer myself, I automatically understand that he spends 3 months on a big chunker novel like The Stand, It, Under the Dome. Whereas with his shorter fiction, he spends a week, 2, 3 at best, and he doesn't do insane corrections, and he doesn't really change the story, in a significant way. This is his style, his preference, if you would, okay? And it's a damn shame because I think a lot of his work suffers from this flaw or defect. Of course, I haven't read all of his work, but the work that I have read of his obviously suffers from this cardinal sin. He writes something, a basic idea, and usually he does not develop this basic idea. What if a couple of young people are trapped on a raft and this ink monster eats them? And that's it. And that's it. See you later, alligator. Nothing else. This is what the raft is. Okay? But that's about it. If you enjoy this content, if you want to support your boy, I got a few books on Amazon. The link will be down below. If the link does not work, you can search my name, Griffith Samsara. Thanks for watching. See ya.